looking for the record button.
I got it.
She's got it. Okay.
Yep.
Well, I just want to welcome you to Dessert and a Movie on this lovely, lovely May evening. Does anybody want to tell us what they're having for dessert to get the party started?
The
I'll jump
brownie
in.
and ice cream.
Yeah.
I made cupcakes with rose petals in them.
Oh, lovely. Now, do you use rose petals from your yard or do you buy
No, I
culinary?
don't. I buy the ones that are made for culinary use because God knows what's on the ones. I mean, I don't spray them, but the environment takes care of them. So
Yeah,
I
pretty
buy the
much.
culinary ones. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That sounds good. Anybody else have an interesting dessert tonight? I have ginger lemon cake with whipped cream
Oh,
on top.
my,
Ooh.
that sounds
Wow.
very fancy.
It's quite tasty, so I had one piece left, so I thought I'd eat it tonight. But we are so blessed to have Crystal Miles with us tonight. She is a master gardener. She in every way. She has horticultural degrees from K-State. She is a certified arborist here in many states, all over the globe. She was telling me all of her many certifications. And we've all seen the film, The Gardener, and she particularly wanted to focus on uh, designing a space that's a garden. In an email to her, I said, it's a completely different thing. There's the pansies that you put by the front door, and then there's a garden, a space that someone's supposed to walk through, and it's completely different. So she's going to tell us about that. So, Crystal, we are very thrilled to have you here. She worked for the city of Lawrence for many, many years, a horticulturist, arborist, and she has a lot of experience, and I just want to hear what she has to tell us. So please share your information with us. We're ready to hear.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here this evening, and I love talking plants or horticulture with anyone. That's one of my favorite things to do. So I've got about 40 some slides, just talking a little bit about, we'll talk about the movie and The Gardener and kind of how that all went, and then talk about kind of creating gardens and some things about colorscaping if you're doing flowers, a little bit about integrated pest management and water, and we'll just go from there. I do live in a rural area, so hopefully my internet stays stable enough to get this all done. So I'm going to do the screen share.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
And we'll all step aside.
Okay. Everyone's getting that.
All right.
So welcome to Lawrence, Kansas. That is us.
Yeah.
And if you hit the from the beginning button at the top on your, then that should up on the bar there. Yeah, that should make it like fill the screen. If we're there, you go. Looks perfect. Oops, there's Shelly.
Fill your screen?
Yep, it's perfect.
Okay. Did not fill my screen. That's supposed to be.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Looking good.
Everyone, I assume, got the watched the documentary The Gardener, and that was an interesting place to have a garden, I thought. So just start with going that direction. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about designing public gardens. And these are some photos that I've taken over the many years working with the city, planted and bought a lot of flowers. So every place is unique is one of the things that you find about gardens. So in referencing with the movie, The Gardener, and I'm not good at all with French. So the Jordan's Day Quatre Vents botanical garden was basically an oasis, and it's located near La Mabi.
Yeah.
Maba, 2 hours east of Quebec City. So this is a private summer residence of the Cabot family, who was originally from Boston, and they were financiers from Boston. Originally, I think they were involved in the rum trade 100 years ago or something like that, I had read. So translated into English, this is a masculine name for 4 winds. The estate covers 90 square miles, we learned in the film, and 22 acres are divided spaces in basically this horticulture continuum of both formal and woodland gardens. And it sounded like they started out with horse trails, and then that got them through the gardens and or the woodland areas, and just use those areas to work off of. The gardens are located on the north shore of the St. Lawrence River, which holds the outflow of the entire Great Lakes system of North America. Which means everything drains to the ocean through the St. Lawrence River. And the river has thousands of islands that make up glaciated rock, and it provides some of the cleanest drinking water in the world. Recently, I think 2018 or 19, I can't remember, our family visited Niagara Falls, and the Niagara River, we were actually on both sides. We were on the Lake of Niagara City, small town, and then we were at Fort Niagara on the other side of the river. And that river also is the water system for New York City. And it also is some of the cleanest water in the world. And it's just a beautiful area. The Quebec's Charlevoix region is located in the what they call the Canadian Shield, and it is dominated by the boreal forest ecosystem. So the Shield is a mountain range or a cliffs, I don't know what you want to call it, but it is a natural land formation. And that region of the country, I listed some species here that you can find there. You can also find a lot of wineries. When we were there, a lot of the wineries were closing out and turning into marijuana farms. But it is classified as continental for seasonal extremes do rule. But then it also has poor soils, and so there's not a lot of agriculture. So that's why they leave these forests in place. Nearby, Niagara Falls attracts 12 million tourists a year. So it's a busy place. So just talking about every place is unique, how do you start with that to create a plan? So first you complete a site assessment and then create a plan. If you have all of you visited the Japanese garden in Lawrence? So I don't have pictures of that this evening, but I was involved with that project. I think in 2000 we did that as a sister city project. And that particular project, basically it's 100 by 100 feet in each direction, very small space. And we sent a site plan over to our sister city of Hiroshima, Japan, and then they sent back a landscape plan. And then I took their landscape plan, and we had to rework it a little bit because we knew they were sending some artwork, and we wanted that to be on the museum side and not on the pizza eatery side. And we had to select Kansas plants. So it was kind of a neat thing, but we did the site assessment for them, and then they created a plan, and then we adapted it to meet Kansas plants and conditions, and a little bit better for the site. So different types of gardens to consider. We'll look at some examples today. So one is container gardens. Our downtown planners would be considered container gardens. And just talk about the importance of trees. And so there's some research that's been done, a Japanese study that found that walking and being in the presence of tree canopies can reduce depression, feelings of isolation by 30%. Basically, it just gives us a mental break. So how does it do that? So that's probably why this garden was created by the Cabot family, is to give them a mental break. And they used trees in alleys, and we'll talk about that some, to create their rooms and so forth. But basically planting the trees becomes the backbone of the garden. And that's something that we consider first. They're going to take up the most real estate, and they have to hold their own in topography. Basic planning can be used in masses as an anchor for the space. And again, we've talked here about how they use hedges to separate each garden and give strength to the channel views. They had some beautiful views that they wanted to emphasize, I guess. So then there's other types of gardens like Victorian English or formal gardens, historic park areas. We have a couple of those in Lawrence. South Park, I think, is not sure if it's on the National Historic Places site or not, but it is in historic environs of others around that area. I know the Trinity Lutheran Church across the street has a National Historic presence. So trees benefit our historic parks. A lot of times the trees, how old are they? If it's a residence, they probably got planted at the same time as the residence. For instance, the Carnegie Building has trees that were planted the same time the building was built back in 1906. So how do they get there, and what is their presence? They do, again, they benefit our immune systems through vibrant colors and soft shapes, aromas, wildlife, sounds, all kinds of things that you get from being out in the trees. So the Quatre, you have to say it, Lorelei. Anyway, it in French,
Vent.
that means it's, go ahead.
It's quatre vents. It's French.
Quatre vents, okay.
Open your
In-
nose.
It's French for a dance or a figure with 4 performers. So it means 4 winds or 4 performers. And so in this case, these gardens, they're all nature-based, they're peaceful, they're really dramatic. There's a term, they call it metaphysical. And so metaphysical is where plants are spaced with a design concept to evoke a sense of spirituality or self-care, reflection, basically trying to get you to connect with the natural world. In Lawrence, I mean, you could take a walk in Bircham Park and see the river, and you know the trails go through the trees in that area. And there's several places around Lawrence where the trails follow riparian areas, or there's some big trees, or even parks that have big trees. I also want to cover a little bit of the term, we call it the oasis concept. And so the oasis concept is to plant trees or other plants, actually plants, they like to live in communities. So the root zones are shared, and there's reduced maintenance for the requirements. And so there's easier watering, and trees actually like to be planted together. So, you know, oasis concept, we're meaning in a park, not necessarily a parking lot. So that's also an oasis concept, but we want to have enough space for our trees to grow, and those are somewhat limited. So other types of landscapes are parks, trails, and shelter house areas. And so Cabot's Garden started with horse trails. They talked about that. And then since Chip Taylor's program's been in place for 25 years now, there's a lot of butterfly gardens and native gardens that are really helping support the ecosystem. And then in Lawrence and other cities, they have right-of-way gardens. They might be roundabouts or just public garden spaces like 6th and Rockledge. We'll have some pictures of that. Garden facts. Plants are as old as time. They've evolved with people. Plants and insects evolved together. So every garden started as a flower in the wild form somewhere. Has probably been developed by modern man. Some flowers are been developed in mountain areas in South America, and somebody's propagated them or collected seed, and now they grow in our gardens. So just things like that. You know, plants can get on an airplane and be around the world in 24 hours. So can insects. So that's kind of a challenge for the plant world. But there are a lot of shared things that are really cool, and they've been developed over time. So Cabot describes his as a bounty of nature plus human creation. So I think what he's saying is you take the bounty of the best and you tweak it, which there's a lot of plant breeders, and especially if you buy proven winners, the royalties on some things like that they've really tweaked them with a price tag. So by creating planned landscapes, we can ease harsh visual pollutions found in dominating angles, like buildings glaring off of glass glaring, concrete jungles, and signs. There's lots of signs that need some softening. Plant native and pollinator plants whenever you can. And I know there's places you can buy those now, not necessarily the garden centers. Some have them, but also through the Master Gardeners of Douglas County, they have a sale coming up. I think they're still collecting orders for that. It's May 31st, I think, is the sale, and others. But the reason for that is you help create habitat. And some of these plants, such as the monarch butterfly, we plant the milkweed because they are an obligate feeder of the milkweed. That means that they are obligated to feed their young to feed on it so that they it has this toxin in it, and they get the toxin, and then birds and things don't eat them. So it's basically for their survival. Successful gardens know their plants, they work hard, study new plants, share with their friends, all kinds of ways to get plants. And great combinations are all unique to the site and to the person. Plants also are adaptable. Basic science, all plants are manufactured their own food, given the photosynthesis, as long as we give them water, CO2, and sunlight. So know what works best for each plant, whether it needs shade, whether it needs sun. Many years at City Hall, we used to plant half of it, the front garden, to white vinca, and the other half to white impatiens. And when you drove by, you didn't notice that they were two different plants. But we did that to take advantage of the shade and the sun. So it was kind of a fun trick for staff, I think, to figure that out. So flowers benefit too from organic matter. K-State's recommending 20% compost to get your plants, get the organic matter that you might need. And of course, some people use mulch, and mulch can come in all different forms. With the Parks and Recreation, we use planters paper, which is like they would use in a watermelon patch or commercial growers. Just comes in a big roll, and it lasts about 6 weeks, which is enough time for the plants to grow enough to get self shade over the soil and the weeds not to come up. Also create gardens create garden harmony and unity by repeating plants and patterns. So this is like using 5 or more. And you can be fluid with that. You can use 5 and then use 5 again somewhere else and kind of repeat and weave your patterns in. One of the things that Chip Taylor had taught me about planting butterfly gardens, and we did this at the library garden, I know, was to create some flight zones. So for instance, we were doing a cleome. So he said, well, make it like 3 feet wide and 20 feet long or something. So you get some flight zones for the butterflies to come in. Also use the 4 dimensions of versatility: height, width, depth, time, those kind of things. You can also space plants closer together to prevent the weeds, and especially like begonias, they like cooler soil. And if you space them closer together, it'll help shade the soil. Divide perennials in a timely fashion. One of the things that Cabot did in his garden, he talked about planting things in a succession of blooms from April to June. So those were perennials that he was using. So I thought that was a good idea. Annuals. So annuals, we call those a great gift to gardeners. They're the most popular plants grown in America, probably besides tomatoes. One of the things that we discovered with the parks was to use sage, and there's all kinds of salvia, which is in the sage. Sage is in the salvia family, and they are a good pollinator and nectar plant, especially the bees love them, but also hummingbirds and butterflies. And annuals are considered just the brightest gem of nature. So in gardens, we are asking people to plant native and pollinator plants. And our pollinator plants can also, there's 2 types. There can be habitat plants and then host plants. And so a host plant might be a plant that's like a zinnia or something that the pollinator would feed on, but they're not an obligate feeder of it. So there's a place for all kinds of different plants among that. And some people have an edible garden that they might put in with their regular flowers. And so that would be things like, you know, zucchinis and lettuces, Swiss chard, herbs are a lot, basil and things like that. There's all kinds of kind of ornamental basils. Color in the garden. So color is one of the most important things, and it helps establish the mood. And it's kind of, this one thing that Cabot talked about was how personalized the gardens become, and the garden takes on the personality of the person designing it. So kind of whatever color that you like, that's probably what you're going to choose the most. So handling color becomes an artistic judgment. So colorful gardens seem like a work of art, and they can make a difference in people's lives. We do suggest, if you use rainbow colors, to use them in succession as they appear in nature. So you have to be real careful. There's a thing called the color wheel. We're all familiar from grade school color wheel. So you would use complementary colors together, or a color run, which is like versions of the same color. Complementary colors are opposites on the color wheel. But if you're going to use warm colors such as red, orange, or yellow, yellow especially is really nice with the blues or the purples. Those are complementary colors. But reds they're hard to deal with. So the more intense the color, the less you plant of it. The complementary color of red is green. So green is, you know, the red and green at Christmas is such a nice combination. So pink and pastels are light and airy, create a feeling of romance. Cool colors such as the blues, white, silver. Generally, these are going to be more drought tolerant plants if you're buying shrubs or perennials. The silver foliage is more drought tolerant. And they give you a repeat of the sky, and it really is a cool and calming effect. So like in South Park a lot over the years, we've used a lot of cool colors, and white and green are considered neutrals. So here's just some garden designs that happened over the years. This one was Prairie Sun Rudbeckia, which is an annual Rudbeckia, and then there was some dark verbena. And that's what it is. Here's some combining colors for success. Here's another one. Combined color to use, and this one was kind of blue was the base, and then we added pink, orange, and yellow. But you see the yellow or the red is very limited because it's a really, really hot color. The Mystic Spires is a taller blue salvia in the back. And then there's some Evolution Blue, which is a taller one. And the Ageratum is the one in the front. That's the high tide, the lower plant. So signs are kind of fun to landscape. Here's another picture of it, a different year. This is the free artwork down at 6th in Massachusetts, an entrance planting. And we use the artist palette from the artwork to it was pastels and matching the plantings to complement the artwork. So and then we added more texture with some of the tall grasses in the background. Kind of fun. Kind of different angle of that. So you can see when you get a lot of red in there, and this is kind of a dark red, so it's not quite as harsh as some of the reds. So this one was, and my screen is really tiny. I'm sorry, I'm struggling to see the words. This was the Biggs begonia, and then the, I think it's Blew My Mind, Evolvulus is in the front. And you can see that little gray foliage on that, and that's just really a very drought tolerant plant. So that was a good combination downtown. One of the downtown planters. And I think these were done for the KU 150 a few years back. So this was kind of a fun little photo I took the 4th of July, just kind of some neat plants downtown. And you can see how here we've used a chartreuse green and picked it up in the coleus. It's got the leaves are chartreuse edges and things. Mid-block landscaping. And so this is the kind of thing that it would be a resting place for someone, get a feeling of enclosure. So that's also how Cabot used his gardens. He had these big alleys, and then he would have resting places with reflecting pools and other things like that. These are just some containers that in cities where there's no landscaping, and so they just created some little spots where they could have some color and again a visual rest for your eye in a downtown situation. So talk a little bit about color. One of the fun plants that people like to use are the Marguerite sweet potato vines. And so have you ever noticed this is a chartreuse green? So what effect does color have in the garden? So greens function as a neutral, or yellow green is often chartreuse, and it's no different. It's versatile, can be paired with virtually anything, any flower, other color. It's bold and kind of enlivens things up. It's a bright color to draw attention. So, so in this garden, the Cabot's garden, they did a lot of designing with perennials and everything from planting bulbs. I think it said they planted over 10,000 bulbs, apple trees, just anything with a flower to, you know. The hardest part about designing with perennials is planning for color of the extended season. So I would have to say that's probably one of the mastermind things that they did, was figuring out that schedule in there. I mean, you would have to document that every year and then know what to plant to fill in the gaps. Because it's going to be different there at that location than it is, you know, down in Boston or out here in the Midwest. It would definitely be a lot different. So that takes a lot of planning and say documentation and scheduling to buy those plants. And some years it might all bloom at the same time if the weather's kind of weird. So other plants you can fill in, they used apple trees I saw. You can also use roses, Spirea, lilac, forsythia, those kind of things. One of the exercises that I try and do with people, if you want to, it's just called a clever and uncomplicated way to design an all-season interest, is just to stand up and stretch your arms out as far as you can. And so the area is approximately 6 foot diameter in all directions, so front and back, side, and then plant a perennial garden that blooms for each season in that 6 foot area, spring, summer, and fall. And as a finishing touch, then add a fourth plant that primarily has good foliage of interest, and then fill in with annuals. So if you just had a small space and you wanted to plant something, you could do that exercise. If you had a larger space, you could do that exercise and then repeat it, you know, like we're talking about these repeating patterns, and just repeat it. And pretty soon you've put together a neat English garden, or a, you know, a border garden, or some kind of oasis, that kind of thing. So it's just a simple way to get started on things. So these are just kind of some gardens. This is this year, that particular year, it was kind of looked like a Victorian garden. It's got the hibiscus in it and roses. I don't know if we have roses still left there or not in South Park, but typically that was a sunken rose garden, and we always tried to keep a few in there. And this was a year that they had blues and grays. You can see those, and it just softens the look and makes it seem like it's further away. It makes the park seem larger. So parks are so I like to use some quotes sometimes. So this one's from Georgia O'Keeffe. It says, "Nobody sees a flower. Really, it's so small. It takes time. We don't have time. It's just to see it takes time. Just like to have a friend, it takes time." So it's a good concept. Flower gardens in the parks are sanctuaries for bees, butterflies, hummingbirds. They're also places where people gather. And so I thought that was a fitting quote. So this is almost an oasis garden. That's also in the parks where we've combined. We started with the tree, which is the backbone, and then we've sort of spread it out. Sometimes we spread out the beds just to keep mowers off the trees and protect them. But generally, they're going to be a combination bed. When long time ago, when our superintendent George Osborne started, he liked to do combination beds, and we kind of continued on that practice over the years. So that served our parks really well, added color and dimension, sizes, shapes, all that kinds of things. So this was a garden at the Union Pacific Depot that I worked on, starting in 1997. And these gardens were mirrored after Versailles, because the architect who was working on the building had been to Versailles, and he thought that would, and the building was a French design. He thought that would be a fun concept. So we tried to put a Kansas flair on it. We went to the city East 40 lot, which is on East 8th Street, and dug up these curbstones. And you can see them kind of in the garden there. They are just floating because there's 70 trains a day that pass through that area, and the ground vibrates. So these are Kansas gardens. We did use some fun things like the ornamental grasses because they give movement, they wave in the wind, and that was a neat thing. We also had created an alley with these upright evergreens, similar to, I think the ones in Cabot's Gardens, they were much tighter fit, but these are at the corners. And these, if you look at the building, the cupola on the building and the ornament on top, I can't think what they call it. Anyway, they line up with the campanile. So they don't line up with the corner of the intersection. They line up with the campanile. So these alley that was created with these evergreens to World War II and got on the train there. So there's a memorial close by that has the names of some of those folks. And here again, you can see that we started with the trees. The trees were the backbone, and they framed the garden on both sides, some big crabapple trees. And that was a neat way to get that all pulled together.
Crystal, there's a question from someone. What specifically do you mean by combination gardens?
So a combination garden would be trees, shrubs, perennials, and flowers.
Okay.
So it wouldn't just be an annual garden by itself. It would have trees and shrubs in it.
Yeah.
So, and that's a little bit difficult to manage if you're a person that likes to go out and rototill everything every year and
Yeah.
start from scratch, because it doesn't work that way. So, yeah. So flowers are like another fun quote. Flowers are like human beings. They thrive on a little kindness. So they need some fertilizer to get them going, especially those petunias. They're heavy feeders. So this is a garden with some fun colors. And I think this is at the Union Pacific Depot. It has the perfected junipers, and they've taken those big ones out now and put in some Taylor ones, which are more tall and narrow, a little bit easier to manage. So in recent times, this was a planting that near the depot. For years and years, they had the 4th of July celebration near the river. So we tried to put some 4th of July fun things in the gardens there. And that was one of the things we did, was these masquerade peppers. So, and they, I think they're edible, but they're hot. So this is another oasis garden that we did. One of our horticulturists, I think John McDonald, worked on this design. And again, you can see this is a combination garden too. So it's got trees, shrubs, grasses, and then it's got places for perennials and so forth. And so it's going to change as the trees get bigger and shade things out. Usually the shrubs will adapt, and they'll be fine. Sometimes if it's a shrub that doesn't adapt, it's gonna get shaded out, and you might have to replace it with something else. But that's kind of how we did this. And the beauty of this oasis garden, well, it was twofold. One, the people used this parking lot a lot for a restaurant that was next door. So they ate their lunches in the parking lot. So we're trying to screen the playground and the shelter activity away from the parking lot a little bit, and then not have it so you could drive through there to the shelter. And then two, if you were at the shelter, it screened you from the parking lot. So it was kind of twofold purpose. So it's viewed from several directions.
You have a fan calling out, "Hi, go Cats." Did you study with Gus Vanderhoven?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know, Gus. So this is a 40-mile-an-hour garden. What we have several of those around the city. They're at intersections on the edge of a park. This one's at 6th and Rockledge, and so there's Christmas lights there. There's like 4 seasons of color. And basically we try and do some bright flowers there, just to people stop there for, you know, a minute or two out of their day to waiting for the light to change, and they can just take a mental break and view some flowers. So we have several of those around. This is another one, different year, different palette of plant materials, a different year. So you'll see some of the flowers. If you look at the name of the flowers, we do a combination of seeded flowers, or when we're working, because we're on a budget. So a combination of plants that are seeded, and then also some proven winners, which are hybrids. So, and they do have a royalty. So you kind of have to balance it out. But again, it's all about managing the color and then trying to get some pollinators in. So definitely the gardens are changing now, getting more pollinators in. And here's a little quote from Claude Monet, and he says, "More than anything, I must have flowers, always, always." So that's a good one.
That is.
So this was a neat, well, I guess I call this a color run of the pinks. And this was a really old picture, but this was one we did years and years ago. In April, the red buds were blooming, and then we had all these pink impression tulips that were blooming. And it was just a fun, beautiful little area on a busy street, 15th and Connecticut. Here's another city median that was landscaped. Again, just a place to rest your eyes when you're at a stoplight. So we did use a lot of this Walker's Low catmint. And again, that's a really drought tolerant plant. And that's the blue on the edge along here. So it was easier to prune than the dwarf barberry that we had there. So that got taken out eventually. So this one was when we landscaped the entrance to the city off of the turnpike. So again, here we're just using some hardy shrubs. These are native black haw viburnums, the flowers were dissimulate some native things, some rudbeckias, and then we did these rock walls to kind of stop traffic for sure, but just to give a taste of what Lawrence is about and have our name there. So this was the entrance planter we installed, golly, probably about 2010. I think it's pretty much been taken out now due to budget cuts. It's just down to grass and a few plants. But it was really nice. And that was one thing that there was this corner, and then also any corners around the city, including downtown, we have a height requirement of 36 inches on KDOT right-of-way. So that was always a challenge to keep the plants low enough that, you know, you don't impede traffic or pedestrians or anything like that. But this had a big drainage hole in the middle of it when we first started. And so the Public Works helped us and put this brick stamped concrete that looks like brick edge around it. And it was all done in-house with the city with pretty limited budget, but it worked great and made a huge improvement of just a drainage hole that was full of weeds.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
On the west side of town, there's some newer things in the last 15 years probably. One is the Rotary Arboretum. And I want to talk just a minute about arboretums. The city, there's 3 arboretums in Lawrence for sure. One is the Douglas County Fairgrounds, and one is South Park, and then this Rotary Arboretum. And what I mean by arboretums is these actually are certified arboretums with ArbNet. And ArbNet is out of Chicago. It's based out of the Morton Arboretum near Chicago, and it is a worldwide certification. So we certified our 2 areas in 2017, and I think the county did theirs in 2018. So if you go to arbnet.org, you can find that. And you can also find it on the Parks and Rec website. There is it's a self-guided tour on Storybook, or Storyboard, I guess, which is part of the city's GIS. Just talk a little bit about WaterWise, Xeriscape Gardens. And this is probably some of Gus Vanderhoven's things right here. So these have been around for a long time, but basically designed for conservation, pick the right plants for the right place, use organic matter, use mulch if you can. Although some people now think mulches are a fire hazard, so they don't want to use them close to your house. Irrigate efficiently, use drought tolerant plants, and there are becoming more of those in the market, so that's really a good thing. Use cool colored plants, use water features for cool things. Do want to explain, Xeriscape is not xeriscaping, so they are different. So Xeriscape is about plants. Xeriscaping is rocks and gravel, and that is not landscaping. So just to make it clear, Xeriscape is not AstroTurf, is not rocks and gravel, and so forth. So it is about the things that we talked about here. So there is a difference, in my opinion, anyways. Water wisely, and so we talked about doing the oasis zones so that you can water plants that are alike together. And then maybe you've got an oasis like out at the Clinton water treatment plant. There's an oasis of native grass that doesn't get any care at all. It doesn't get mowed or anything. So you can have different kind of oasis. And if you have a lawn where you want to have native grasses, but you don't think your
Neighbors.
homeowners association would allow that, sometimes you can make those into zones or oasis and then mow around them so it looks manicured and make it creative. So this is there's different ways of doing things, I guess. You can also just use a few containers and just have a little bit of color. Like I don't have, where I live, I don't have a lot of time to water gardens, so I just have some container plants. And I buy the biggest containers that I can, so I water them less frequently. So integrated pest management, the city has a whole program on that on their website, Parks and Recs does, that was developed. Basically, it's about thinking about what you do, stop and think. The ecosystem is an ecosystem-based strategy that focuses on long-term prevention of pests and their damage through a combination of techniques such as biological control, habitat manipulation, modification, cultural practices, and that can include pruning as well, and use resistant varieties. One thing we did with burning bush, there's a lot of it in parking lots and so forth. We used to have to spray it. We stopped doing that and we went to doing a pretty heavy prune every other year, and then sanitation. We cleaned up the stems and the leaves and things, and we pretty much kept the mite population under control. So we were able to do that by just thinking more proactively, I guess, on that. And stop and think is at every level of making a choice. So that's not just from what you buy to how you do it, your timing. There's just a lot of things that make a difference, and you have to take the time to figure that out. Mulching things, again, helps conserve moisture. The city parks, they use a lot of mulch. And again, high density planting, especially for flowers, to cover those areas and terrorize those weeds, I guess. Taking care of your flowers, you can deadhead them, buy plants that don't need deadheading. Those are really neat. This is also use the least toxic products. In the city parks, there are only caution labeled products or less. There are no category 1 or 2, which is a danger and warning per city policy. In Monarch Watch Gardens, there's no pesticides allowed. And that is also includes the plants that you buy at the store. So that goes all the way down to the producer. So in conclusion, how can you help? The creation of plants and animals as counterparts is considered beyond the scope of human beings, and yet Earth somehow must maintain our balance, especially trees for the survival of the human race. And what do trees do? Trees give us oxygen. I believe that it's been said you need 2 trees for every 4 people. So that is every single neighborhood, every single commercial district, wherever you are, trees are needed. Learn about flowers and colors in nature. Visit your local parks, regional parks, botanical gardens, and arboretums. So there's 3 arboretums in Lawrence. There's one on K-State campus, botanical gardens. I know the Ward Mead Park in Topeka is a botanical garden, and the library went on a trip there last year. That was awesome. So find out where those things are. There's also the Overland Park Arboretum. It's a little bit far from here, but that's a wonderful place. It's quite large. But just be outside in your own community, and take a child with you if you can, your grandkids. Help them learn about nature's creatures and fill that nature gap. Start early. A wise gardener anticipates June and January. And that's all I have. I did provide a few references if you're interested. And I'll be glad to take any questions if you have some.
That's wonderful. There, you covered so much. You mentioned a panicle garden. Are we talking about hydrangeas? Because I've seen panicle hydrangeas.
They're available. Yeah,
What is a panicle garden?
I'm not sure. I need to look it up.
Because I know I bought I have some hydrangea bushes, and I was thinking the big, white flowers, and this one just kind of has this beautiful elongated, lovely bloom on it. And they last all season once they come on, and that was a panicle, so I don't know.
There are places like Nantucket where the whole island is hydrangeas.
Amazing.
Kind of interesting. Yeah.
And I have another question. You mentioned controlling pesticides, and I had heard that it makes a difference where you buy your bedding plants. In other words, you want to get a bedding plant that hasn't been somehow pre-treated with a pesticide, because some of them are, and so as that beautiful lily or whatever comes up, of course, it wouldn't come from let's say, a geranium. And a bee would get on it and it would not feel well after it did, because it was treated, the soil and so forth and so on. Is that a story? Is that real, or is that just a story they tell us to get us worried about one more thing?
Just a minute. Steve, are you here? I don't know. I went cut my screen off.
Nope.
Mm.
Is there a green button bearing on there on the bottom? Are you trying to get it back on?
You can get it back on.
No, I'm
There
trying to
you
turn it
are.
off. How do I turn it off?
Turn it off.
The screen sharing. I don't need to do that anymore.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's off on our end.
I can't. I was gonna turn off my screen, but I can't get that to do that.
Oh.
It's behind something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're off for us anyway.
Okay. So, I lost track. Tell me your question again. You're asking about pesticides from the producer.
Well, I know
Yeah,
that
okay.
pesticides
So you
are,
have to ask those questions from them or know your producer.
yeah.
If you buy it from a large outlet, you don't really know unless they know where they come from. They can call and ask those questions.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah.
But they can be, the plant itself somehow is pre-treated so that when it grows to be a beautiful flower, it looks really nice and the bugs won't eat it. But unfortunately, the nice bugs who visit it will die along with the so-called bad bugs. By the way, is there any such thing as a bad bug?
Bagworms.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's a
yeah.
bad bug.
Yeah.
That's bad.
I'll give you that. Any other questions?
Well, I'm curious as to what people thought of the movie. I mean,
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's go back to the movie.
yeah, I thought he was a really interesting guy. I mean, wow, what a background. And he just ends up having this incredible talent in gardening.
He had
Yes.
a passion for it for sure.
Yeah.
And he traveled, to England and other places just to visualize, saw what or Japan even visualize what he wanted to do. And then he came back and did it
I know.
with plants from his own location. So he had to adapt those gardens, but that was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
I
So,
thought
a
it
lot
was
of knowledge.
amazing that he had that Japanese garden built, and it took so many years to get that built. I mean, what a project.
Yeah.
That was, and it was helpful, of course, that he was rich. I mean,
Yeah,
do all
he had
this stuff.
resources. Yeah.
But still, I mean, that was amazing. But that could be done on a very small scale too. I mean, you could have a Zen, well, like they have that you did, Crystal, by the historical
Mhm.
society, or you could even have a really small one, I think, if you wanted to have anything that was themed like that. But that was incredible. The man that worked on building the Japanese structures was really something.
Mhm. So, Jack, you want to talk more about Arbor Lodge? It sounds
Oh,
interesting.
yeah, if ever anybody, I mean, there's wonderful gardens here. The one in Overland Park is phenomenal, and they just got added by their city another 600 acres to double their size. So it's already a great garden, and it's going to be even better. But we took a road trip. If you're going up to Omaha or any in that area, to make a stop at Nebraska City, guy came there. His name is Morton. Wealthy publisher. All the newspaper people in those days were wealthy, and he was. Built a beautiful mansion you can tour, but he noticed there were no trees. And you got to remember, this area was a sea at one time, so there's not a lot of native trees. There was nothing there, and he started planting them. Got his neighbors to do it, got the cities to do it, and he's the founder of Arbor Day as we know it today.
And
It
we're-
started in the city of Nebraska City. It became a state holiday and eventually became a federal holiday. His son is the Morton in Chicago, who's Morton Salt, one of his two sons, was up there. But he was the founder of Arbor Day. So if you like more of an arboretum feel, the ground around there are really nice, and it's a nice tour, just kind of a little out of the way road trip kind of thing if you're heading up north somewhere. So
I'm actually headed there next week. We're going, our Master Gardener group is going to Lincoln, and then we're going to stay overnight at the Arbor Lodge and visit
Oh,
the
yeah.
Arboretum.
the
and
lodge,
everything.
yeah, the lodge is
Yeah,
really
it's
nice
beautiful.
convention space, but
Yeah.
you're just a mile away from the house. If you guys can take a chance to take the tour and hear a little bit about the guy who did it,
Yeah, we have that
it's a nice
scheduled. We're
house.
planning to do that.
Oh, yeah,
that's
it's
awesome.
you'll love that, Crystal. It's
That'd be great.
really
That'll be
enjoyable.
interesting.
It's very much about trees, not flowers, although the
Right.
grounds are beautiful, but it's
Yeah.
just
I read
lovely.
somewhere where they, the first Arbor Day, he organized planting over 1 million trees in one day.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's quite an effort.
He was very dedicated, and he was wealthy and had a lot of connection. He became a representative or a senator, so it was a little easier for him to get it turned into a national holiday than the average Joe. But then on the other hand, it was easier for Cabot to create that garden than the average person, who makes $40,000 a year. So,
Yeah.
but nonetheless, the movie was wonderful. What a beautiful
Yeah, it was
site.
very
And,
creative.
that goes on the bucket list.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all need to take a field trip to Quatre-Vents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that we could get there when it's open, but you can sure go to Niagara Falls and
Yeah.
get a feel for some of that as well. The British Gardens on the the Canadian side are quite wonderful. And there's also a horticultural school there at Niagara Falls. And so they train a lot of people in the profession, and it's really supported.
Yeah.
So,
If you
There
go
are
up there, stay on the Canadian side. It's kind of nicer to me than the American side.
yeah.
But the gardens there on the north side are just beautiful. I've been there too, Chris, so they're just great.
I've heard a lot of wonderful things about Powell Gardens. I imagine most
Oh,
of you
yeah.
have been there in Missouri. How beautiful that is.
Just a long trip, but it is
It
really,
is.
It
They
is,
keep
really-
yeah.
adding
it's
a lot
really
of
nice.
things to it, so that
Yeah.
makes it neat. They change it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But
And
all
I've
of those things are so neat because they really, you just feel alive when you go there and you see different colors and the insects, the butterflies and things that everyone's trying to attract all of that. And it's really just a wonderful experience to go to these gardens and spend your day in nature, I guess.
Right. And one of his quotes was that he said, a good garden has a soul. It has your soul.
Yeah.
And I think it is a beautiful expression of your love of nature or whatever to see the flowers. I know I'm thrilled to pieces right now about peonies.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Yeah,
such a gift.
so
to
pretty.
smell just for such a short time.
Yeah.
If you
That's-
plant the single peonies instead of the doubles, they don't fall over.
Well,
So
that's
No.
good.
that's a good plant for a landscape, is to
Yeah.
plant the single ones instead of the double. Like in the Japanese garden, we have the single. They're one of the plants that they put in
Yeah.
Japanese gardens, and they hold up pretty well.
How did everybody like the movie? You want like 5 is I loved it, and 1 is like this guy needs to get out more. So just tell me what you thought. Yeah, I just thought I just wanted to go to that garden. And I believe, if I heard it right, that it's open 4 days a year.
Mhm.
So, and I did look it up once, and you can get a ticket, and you just need to get yourself up to Quebec and
Easy
put on
drive,
your
right?
shoes and wander through. And it is it's even that, was it the Pigeonniere, where if you go into the Pigeonniere and upstairs is the beautiful furniture, and it's just mind-blowing. It is just mind-blowing, but there's worse things to do with a fortune.
Ah,
The
So-
Japanese garden in Lawrence is located in the 1000 block of Massachusetts Street, uh,
right
next
next
to
to
the Watkins
Watkins.
Museum.
Mhm,
It's
right.
pretty.
Any more questions? Well, thank you for coming tonight. Oh my gosh, Crystal, thank you for all that information.
Wow.
I could ask you about 75 questions, so I'll have to come to a garden sometime and help you dig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for
Go
being
visit
here.
South Park and ask the workers.
I will.
They're all pretty knowledgeable.
Next month, we're going to watch a film, The Intouchables. It's a French film. It's a story about friendship. And our expert is going to be a person who spends time helping people improve their relationships, I believe. So do look for it. It's not The Untouchables, which we know
Yeah.
that story. It had to do with machine guns. The Intouchables is a completely different story. So I hope you'll take a look at it. And Crystal, thank you so much for being here. We all give you
You're welcome.
applause, and thank
Yeah,
you.
get out and enjoy your parks.
Yes, we will. We'll get out and enjoy our parks, and thank you for creating them for us. We appreciate
Yeah.
that very much. Places to rest our eyes. Thank you for that. And see you all next time, folks. Have a good evening and get outside and talk to a tree tonight.